Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, as you saw from the title, we are going to be doing my July wrap up. I feel like I say this every single month, but it is genuinely crazy that it is already August. I feel like summer is flying by, but I had a really good reading month in June. I read a lot of good books. This month was kind of a big variety of books. Definitely read some summary reads, also read some new releases. So we're gonna go through all of that in this video. And yeah, just stick around to see what I read this month. I started this in June, but I finished it in July, and that is Happy Place by Emily Henry. This is actually a reread. If you saw my rereading my 5 stars, this book was in there, and of course I gave this a 5-star again. I just adore this book so much. Wynne and Harriet have been engaged, and they recently broke off their engagement, but they're lying or pretending to still be engaged in front of their friends because they are going on a trip with their friends. But it's so much more than that. It is about like friendship as you grow older and things changing, and I just related to so much of this book the first time around and definitely related to it the second time. I annotated the heck out of this book and I really just loved it so much. And another 5-star reread was Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I wanted to read this because Reckless was coming out, and I read this back in December maybe, so I wanted to like refresh my memory before going into Reckless. If you don't know, this is obviously a fantasy, if you can't tell by the cover, but it is about Kai and Peyton, and Peyton is an ordinary in this world, so she doesn't have any powers. Kai is an elite, he's actually the prince, and his job is literally to get rid of ordinary, so his job is to get rid of Peyton. Then you have these trials that occur, and the two of them kind of start to develop feelings for each other, but he doesn't know that she's an ordinary. It is, oh my god, the tension in this book is unreal. Like, it is so good. If you want a slow burn, definitely read this book. But yeah, of course, 5-star yet again. Then I jumped right into Reckless. This came out at the beginning of July and I could not wait to read it. So this is obviously the second book. Can't say too much about the plot just because it gives away a lot of what happens in the first book, but this was not necessarily what I was expecting, but I still really enjoyed it. I know I've seen kind of mixed reviews. Some people weren't loving it as much. It is definitely like there's not as much tension, or there is tension, but there's not as much happening, I feel like. Lauren Roberts herself even said that this book is really setting up for the third book. So I feel like there were a lot of things brought up, a lot of questions left unanswered, but I know the third book and the third and final book in the trilogy is going to really wrap all of that up. But I still loved it. I loved seeing Kai and Peyton together. Their banter and just the way that they are around each other is like my absolute favorite part of this series. Then I read another new release, and that is Play Along by Liz Tomforde, and I gave this one 4.5 stars. Also, did I mention I gave Reckless 5 stars? I don't know that I did, but I gave this one 5 stars. Play Along is the 4th book in the Windy City series, and I love this series so much. They are all sports romances. This one is a baseball romance, and this is about Isaiah and Kennedy. Kennedy works as a kind of like personal trainer sort of on the baseball team that Isaiah is on, and one night in Vegas the two of them get married drunkenly, and they were just gonna try and like annul the marriage and pretend it never happened, but then their team found out about it, and so now they have to pretend that they have been secretly dating and now are married and have to travel together, stay in hotels together. It's very much forced proximity. I love it so much. Isaiah is so, oh my god, I just love him so much. He is so down bad for Kennedy, and Kennedy kind of is just like annoyed by him and like just is like, leave me alone. But he tries so hard for her, and he will literally do anything for her. It is so sweet. I really enjoyed it. I also love, because this is an interconnected standalone, you get all the characters from the previous books, especially Kai. He's Isaiah's brother, and the third book in the series was about him, so you get him as well. I'm really excited for the fifth and final book because it is about one of the characters that keeps getting brought up, and everyone has been waiting for his book, and we're finally getting it, so I cannot wait for that. And I read The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston, and I read this for a reading blog, so I talk more about it in there, but I gave this one 4 stars. I did really enjoy it. It's been a book that I've been wanting to read for a while. This is about Clementine. She moves into her aunt's apartment, and her aunt always told her the apartment was magical. She goes into the apartment one day and she is 7 years in the past, and there's a random man in there, and she finds out that this man's mom knew her aunt and he's going to be staying there for a few months. And so the two of them kind of become friends, but it's not every time she is in the apartment. It's 7 years in the past, so she only sees him occasionally, and they kind of strike up a little bit of this friendship, and it's just really sweet. I like the love story a lot. I think what kind of took me out of it was the back and forth timelines a little bit. It would be a little confusing because you never knew when she was kind of slipping into the past time and that kind of stuff. I still really liked it, but I think for me personally, that kind of took me out of it a little bit. Also, it's not quite a fantasy. I wouldn't consider it like a romantasy, but there is that magical element in it instead of just a romance. There's also some really deep messages in here, and I just think the storyline and the writing was incredible. I loved the writing so much. There was a lot of stuff that I underlined because the writing was just phenomenal. Then I read Hang the Moon by Jeanette Walls. I've had this book sitting on my TBR for a while. My mom gave it to me, and it wasn't one that I was necessarily intrigued to pick up, but in the Emojis Pick My Books reading blog, we got this book. It's basically about Sally, and she grows up in Virginia during the Prohibition era in a very small town, and her dad is kind of like, he's not necessarily the mayor, but he kind of runs things in this town, and it is pretty much just like a coming of age sort of story about her. There's a lot of things that happen, but I feel like it was a lot of info dumping, and a lot of things would all happen at once, and I was kind of waiting for like the other shoe to drop or for everything to finally come together and like be like, oh, this makes sense. But like the end, it ended, and I was like, that's it. Like I was really expecting more. I ended up listening to most of it on audiobook because I just could not get myself into reading it for some reason. I was just kind of finding myself a little bored. So it's not for me, but if you like historical fiction, especially from that time period, you might enjoy it, but it just wasn't one for me. So I gave this one 2.5 stars. Then I read Done and Dusted. This is the first book in the Rebel Blue Ranch series by Lila Sage, and I, first of all, am just obsessed with the covers of these books. Like, they are so cute. But yeah, so I am so happy that I read this one because it really put me in my cowboy romance era. Like, I now want to read more cowboy romances again. I'm missing it, especially after finishing Chestnut Springs and everything. Like, I need more cowboy romances in my life. But this is about Emmy, and she moves back to her small town in Wyoming. She was living in Denver as a horse rider, but she has an accident, and she's kind of like scared to get back on the horse, so she decides to move back to her small town where her family owns a ranch, and she's kind of just working on the ranch, trying to figure out if she's going to go back to horse racing or if she's done with it. And then in comes Luke, her brother's best friend. She's known him her whole life, and they kind of annoy each other. She kind of thinks he's like this bad boy, but he kind of tries to help her with getting back on the horse and everything, and they just have a really sweet relationship. I really liked it a lot. I gave this 3.5 stars, and the only reason I gave it that is because I wish there was just more tension and depth overall. I feel like it was a very short book, and I almost wish that it was a little bit longer so we got more interactions between Luke and Emmy, a little bit more tension and depth. It kind of felt like the problems were resolved really quickly, and I just kind of wish we got a little bit more, I don't know how else to say it other than depth in these characters, but I still really enjoyed it. I loved the setting so much. It was a very quick and easy read, so if you're looking for a quick summer read, I would highly recommend it. Finally, to round out the month, I finally started the Off Campus series. I feel like I'm the last person ever to read this series. It came out, I think the first book came out in like 2015, so it's been out for a very long time, but I feel like everyone read it like probably like 2020 or even earlier, and I'm just now finally getting around to it, and I totally understand the hype. Like, I am really enjoying this series so much. I'm on the 4th book now, but I did finish the first 2 books at the end of July. So the first book is The Deal, and this is about Hannah and Garrett, and they are in the same ethics class, and Garrett fails the midterm, and he realizes that if he doesn't do better on the makeup, he might risk getting benched for poor grades. And so he finds out that Hannah did really well, and so he starts like begging her to tutor him, and she's like, I don't have time for this, like I have so much else going on in my life, like I don't have time to tutor you. And he just keeps begging her and begging her, and I just really love their relationship. I think it's so sweet. I love the found family in this series. Like, they're all in college, and they all obviously have this one big friend group centered around the hockey players who are like the it athletes of this university. But you also have like Hannah's friends and just other random people, and there's just this great group like in this series that I've just loved reading about. Like, I'm honestly gonna miss these characters when I finish this series because it's just been so fun to read about them. I gave that one 4 stars. The thing with these books is they are very like light, easy, spicy books. So while I am enjoying them and they are, overall the series is really good and I would highly recommend it, I don't foresee any of them being 5 stars for me, just because usually for me to rate a romance a 5 star, there has to be a lot of emotional depth. Typically there ends up being a bigger plot other than just the romance, and these are very heavily focused on romance, which is not a bad thing at all. I'm still really enjoying them. I am thoroughly entertained, but there are some parts that are a little cringy for me or feel a little almost like Wattpad writing, but I mean, I'm still entertained. I literally have not stopped thinking about reading these books. Like, when I'm not reading, I want to be reading. So like, if that says anything, that is a really good book, but I just don't see myself rating any of them 5 stars. And then the last book that I read this month was the second book in the off-campus series, The Mistake, and this is about Logan and Grace. The two of them kind of have this accidental meeting. He thinks that he is going to his friend's dorm, but he actually shows up at Grace's dorm, and then they kind of spend a night together and hang out. Things sort of happen from there, and I love their relationship. Logan is so sweet. Like, he is such a golden retriever boyfriend for sure. He's just such a sweet guy, and the way he thinks about Grace is just adorable, and I just really love them together. Like, their couple is probably one of my favorites. I do love Hannah and Garrett, but I think they might be like second or maybe tied for first. I don't know. So that is all for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. July was a really good reading month, and hopefully August is just as good. I have a couple trips coming up in August, so I'm not sure how much reading will get done, or we might get more done because I'll have a lot of like travel time. So who knows, we'll find out. But thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.